loves. Welcome or welcome back to Chemistry with Kismet Tarot. I am Monica, the Kismet Chemist. If you're new to my channel, welcome. Welcome to the family. If you are returning, welcome back. I have missed you. We are officially in October. We are officially kicking off my favorite month and what I love to call spooky season, because Halloween or Samhain is my favorite holiday. And I have a whole bunch of exciting readings and a collab and all sorts of fun stuff planned. But this reading is very near and dear to my heart, to my ancestry. This is a reading where we're going to be receiving the lessons from Salem Village. Now, many of us have heard of the Salem witch trials, whether that's because you have read The Crucible or because it's a common topic and story. It is one of the darker times in our country's past. In the 1690s, many men and women, even some children, were accused of witchcraft, of devil work, accused of tormenting villagers, not in a physical way, but in a spectral way. And in my opinion, based off of what I know and the amount of research that I've done, it was a moment of mass hysteria, fueled and driven by fear and youthful power and excitement of that power, and a need to belong, and religious hysteria. Most people think that Salem witch trials occurred in Salem, Massachusetts, what we know as Salem now. But in truth, it was Salem Village, which became Danvers, Massachusetts. Now, if I have any horror film fans and Danvers rings a bell, that is because the third Conjuring movie was set in Danvers. My heart feels so heavy, but at the same time, I couldn't deny when I felt the call and the pull to do this reading. It has been 3 years since I learned the truth. In March of 2020, April of 2020, I became what I would say spiritually fixated on the Salem witch trials. I did so much research. I looked at the Puritan belief systems, the concepts, the ideations, and I found my mind just completely boggled at how a Puritan village could give so much credence to a foreign slave girl and several young children, young girls at that. This was not a belief system that gave to those things. I have my own opinions on it, and I would like to keep my own personal opinions separate. But I researched these people, their stories, their lives, their loss, their backstories as much as I could find. And I couldn't understand why. Could not understand why this was so important. I thought maybe, this was when I was beginning to really allow myself to believe that I was going to be an author. And so I thought, I'll write a fiction story about Salem and the witch trials. I've always loved magic. I have always loved mystery, and it just seemed so perfect. I'll give it a different spin. I'll create a new story. And over time, things got in the way, life got in the way, and I put it away, thinking nothing of it. In November and December of 2020, I had this deep spiritual calling after having a second incredibly intense spiritual awakening over the course of several months from July through October. It was one thing after another of awakening and awareness and coming into my gifts, accepting my gifts, reopening doors that I had shut many years ago. In November and December, though, I was called to ancestry, to researching my ancestry. And in that time of my spiritual journey, when I would research these things, I wouldn't stop. I would spend hours upon hours, 16, 18, 20 hours a day on little sleep until I felt satisfied in what I was looking for and what I was meant to learn. And through the course of that, part of it was that I wanted to understand my dad's side of the family. He had passed away. His side of the family was so unreliable in communication because of their struggles with addiction that answers in tracing my ancestry was the best that I could hope for. What I didn't expect was to find the name and the connection to Salem Village that I have. I was in shock when I found that. The first card is Sarah Poolgood. Sarah had a sister, Bethia. Bethia married a John Herrick. John Herrick was a brother of Ephraim Herrick. Ephraim Herrick is my great-grandfather times 15. And I came to learn that my family had a large part to do with establishing Salem Village. One of my great uncles times 15 was, I want to say it was the magister during that time. The family that I was born into in this life was intricately connected to the deaths of the people. And one who's shared a common family name, John Herrick, so common that it became my father's. That one married a sister of one of the first women accused. This time, this story is part of my ancestry. And so when I first thought I was going to be doing a reading about ancestry, I had not yet realized that it was going to be my own ancestry that I was going to be tapping into and teaching. I thought it would be all of yours, and some of you may be connected. Each one of these cards is one of the accused, one of the victims. Each one of these died due to the Salem witch trials, the accusations. And each one has a story. And they also have a lesson for us. Collectively, When I asked what collective energy we're learning about, I got the woman rune. And I was not at all surprised to see that come out, because this was a predominantly female-driven occurrence. And for so long, femininity, women's rights, all of these things end by proxy or as a result of divine feminine energy has been skewed, misconstrued, misunderstood, squashed out, silenced. We are learning a little bit more from each of these accused. So, with all that being said, first of all, thank you guys for being here. This is a very, it's just a very personal to me reading. And so it's kind of, in a way, me sharing a big part of me with you. We have 4 piles. And again, we are using the witch runes. Pile 1 is Sarah Poolgood. When I asked her what runes, the moon and waves came out. Pile 2 is Giles Corey. When I asked him what rune, the scythe came out. Pile 3 was Sarah Osborne. When I asked her what rune, the rings came out. And pile 4 is Bridget Bishop. And when I asked her what rune, the harvest rune came out. However, it should be known that when the harvest rune came out, it was flipped upside down. And while these runes are not normally read in a form of reversal, I do want to honor the intention of the messages from Bridget with this being how it came out. So I wanted to let you guys see the rune first and then put it how she intended for it to be. This is going to be a more intense reading. This was a very dark time. All 4 of these people died in horrendous ways. If you are feeling triggered, if you are feeling uncomfortable, I encourage you to stop the video. You can come back if you feel ready, or perhaps this is not right for you. In moving forward, all I ask is that we honor these lives and their stories and the messages and the wisdom and the lessons that they have for us today. I'm going to give you guys some time. I will put on some meditation music and ask your guides to lead you to the piles or piles that have messages for you. And I will see you at your piles. also pile 1. If you chose Sarah Poole Good and the moon as well as the waves rune, this is the message and lesson that she would like to share. I want to give a little bit of the story of who Sarah Poole Good is for any of you who don't know. Sarah Poole Good was one of the first accused. She also became an accuser herself. And in historical documents, it was her accusation against another in Salem Village that solidified the claims and allegations of witchcraft. This card on this side represents the lesson and the theme of the lesson itself. These 2 cards on the outside, the orange ones, represent the unseen forces at work, whether good or bad, however the perception is. And this middle one represents spiritual help. We're also going to get tarot cards to draw parallels in storylines between her story and yours so that a greater understanding can come in. I do have sage going, as you guys can see. I have rung my witch bell, and I would like to open the energy up now. Sarah Poole Good was born to a wealthy innkeeper, John Solart. However, John passed away unexpectedly, suddenly, and in some accounts, and based off of some of the channeling that I did in questionable ways, some people thought he committed suicide. Some people believed that he may have been murdered. He fell into the river and passed away. Because of this, his wife quickly remarried again, and they took control of the inn. And Sarah and her sister and their siblings were left out of the inheritance. And essentially, the inheritance that should have occurred was tied up in litigation. Sarah married for love with her first husband. However, he was an indentured servant, deeply in debt, and he passed away. She married a second time, and because of the debt that she carried from her first husband that was transferred to her second marriage, her and her second husband, as well as their 2 young children, were left homeless. Oftentimes it is portrayed as she's a hag and a beggar. They oftentimes had to rent rooms in houses of local villagers or friends, but she had a very abrasive personality and was very outspoken. She spoke her mind. Those are qualities that were looked down upon. With the moon and the waves rune, the energy that she's bringing forth, combined with the theme of the lesson with the novice, has to do with intuition, emotions, and the chaos of forgetting hope. This novice card, it talks about believing in possibility, believing in the goodness, believing in all the dreams and things that you wish to accomplish, and believing in yourself. But it also talks about how failures and difficulties can take its toll, and you can lose that part of you that embraces being a novice, embraces being curious, embraces wanting to know. From my understanding and personal channeling, And you can take this as either a spiritual lesson or as simply something that Spirit wanted to pass on. For me, I spent a lot of time looking into Sarah because in a way, she too is one of my ancestors. Being the sister of one of my ancestors, I feel intricately connected to her. A mother knows best, but sometimes a mother doesn't know best. Sometimes we can forget to listen to that little voice inside of us because there is so much chaos surrounding us that we don't know which way to turn, and no one seems to understand or care enough. And so we become the storm instead of becoming the calm within the storm. We become it. And we lose sight of that curiosity. And we can silence our fears, or we can silence our intuition. When Sarah accused someone else, I truly believe she did that out of fear, hoping that if she were to say it was not me, it was someone else, that in doing so, they would see that she's trying to help. Unfortunately, that was not what happened. They imprisoned her as she was pregnant with her third child. And it didn't take long for her daughter, Dorcas or Dorothy, to also be accused and imprisoned for months. The damage done to Dorothy irreparably changed her. Sarah stayed in prison and gave birth to a little baby girl. And that baby girl died in prison with Sarah shortly before Sarah was taken to the gallows. Sarah stood steadfast in her innocence, in the wrongness of what was going on. At the end, while yes, she may have made a wrong step in the beginning by throwing out another accusation, she stood very firm on how wrong it was, what she was not. Life throws us curveballs. Life throws us into the deep end. No floaties, no lessons. In that day and age, intuition alone may have led her on the right path, may have helped her, but the weight of the loss of her father and the ousting from her family, the loss of her first love and first husband, and what I truly believe to be the resentment of her second husband, turned her colder, more distant, especially from herself. The energy that I'm getting is a desire to remind you what it was like, to remind you what it feels like to believe in yourself, to believe in the goodness, to know that you can make mistakes, to know that bad things happen, and bad things happen to good people, and good things happen to bad people, but bad things happen to bad people, and good things happen to good people. It's not up to us. What is up to us is how we face the waves, how we face the tumultuous moments, how we face the times where we are challenged to our core, whether we rise or whether we fall, whether we stay true or whether we pander, waver, vacillate. But inside each and every one of us lies that same curious, intuitive, intellectual, wondrous part that some of us think of as our inner child, but some of us just are that way. And that part is a part of you that is connected to spirit. And that is the part that she wants to remind you of. So let's take a look at the unseen forces. We have intellect and melting. You know, I just heard melting pot, a melting pot. We call America a great melting pot. I apologize if you guys can hear my dogs. They're all kind of riled up right now. But they call America a great melting pot because we were established as a safe haven for many different ethnicities, races, genders, religions. Many different peoples have come here and created this place. And back in that time, the Puritans had left England to escape the burnings, to escape to be free to practice. But sometimes we forget that that's what this place was meant to be. Our intellect gets in the way. Sometimes we fail to see that intellect has been eroded or has melted away. It's been burned like a candle. And when you burn a candle long enough, the candle melts down and the wax melts away, and you're left with either just a little bit of wax and the wick is gone, or you're left with just the remnants of what held the wick. But it melts away. When you're going through these things, sometimes our intellect can become the wick that's burning and melting away at our intuition. And that's not to say that the intellect isn't a good thing to hold, but it's meant to be held alongside our intuition and not above it, not instead of it. And these unseen forces where the intellect becomes the flame and the intuition is the wax, they can be missed because the intuition, and especially when you're in a day and age like Sarah's, or even raised similar to how I was in a very Christian family, the intuition needs to be melted. It needs to be burned away because it's seen as bad. It's seen as a negative force that is devil work. And sometimes we have intellect that would tell us this isn't the right choice, this isn't the right decision, this isn't the right direction, but it has been eroded over time by the pressure of the life that we're living or the experiences that we've had. We aren't able to keep our minds nearly as sharp, or our minds are too sharp for our status in life. These are hard lessons, hard truths, hard moments, and they become harder to hold on to the novice energy. So let's see what spiritual help exists. We have illumination. I find it almost laughable while also very beautiful that illumination and melting both have figures that are facing the intellect card. But illumination oftentimes is correlated to the moon. When we're in a new moon phase, the night sky is dark. There is no illumination. And we can think the moon is gone. It's gone. It's not there. But in truth, we know that the moon is traveling through the sky during the day with the sun in alignment. We just can't see it. There are moments in our life where when we can't see, we can look to the stars. We can look to the luminaries. We can look to the past. And if we allow for what we think we know to be melted, we might see that all of that intellect is clouding our inspiration, our intuition, clouding our curiosity. Sarah may not have understood. She may not have been able to access the illumination that she needed. When I tap into the energy of that time and her energy, there is grief, there is sadness, there is confusion, there is a lot of anger, and there's fear and regret. I get this feeling that she doesn't want these things to be how your descendants experience your energy when tapping into it. Your story does not have to be her story. But her moment of illumination was that if she were to walk to the gallows, as she walked there, as she stood there, and they asked her one more time to confess, a confession wouldn't have made a difference one way or the other. She'd already experienced an accusation come against her that was proven to be false. And the judge didn't care, just told the accuser to stick to the facts. The illumination that she had in that moment was that her final times were a chance for her to fully step into who she is, and who she was someone who knew that this was not okay, and stood there and said, of course, in very religious terms, because this was a Puritan society, told the executioner, told the judge, I am no more a witch than you are a wizard. And if you, I believe it was, execute me today, God will have you drink blood. And as graphic as that statement is, what she was saying in essence is, I know who I am. And I know what you are accusing me of. And what you're accusing me of is no different than if it's, I am the same as you. So if you are accusing me of this, then you must be this as well. We are the same. And what you're doing is wrong. And there is karmic retribution. There is a karmic comeuppance from something like this. She didn't seek to place false curses or anything like that. What she did was she stood true to herself and made sure that her truth was heard. So let's take a look. We're going to see if there's some tarot cards here. Sarah, can you show us the storyline to connect to pile one? How does this story connect with the collective of pile one, Sarah? Okay, we have the Seven of Tombs, which represents the Pentacles, the Six of Staves, the Ace of Staves, both of which represent Wands energy, Queen of Chalices, which represents Cups energy, and the High Priestess. No matter how much life hits you, no matter how much you can get knocked down, people can misunderstand. When you trust and believe in yourself, when you keep that curiosity, when you allow for your intuition to guide you, when you allow your goodness to guide you, when you allow your truth to guide you, when you really dedicate yourself to the work that you're doing, whatever that is, you will find a victorious mindset. It is there for you. But, she wants to say, but there is okay. I was fighting the word that came through. So I just wanted to let you guys know. That's why I paused. I was fighting the word that came through, but I don't want to fight her message. You will find your way. You will find your inspiration, your victory, your mindset, your truth, your clarity, your purpose, your illumination. You will find that moment for yourself. But there is a requirement that you already know. And that requirement is an acceptance of yourself, of all of yourself, of the depths of the emotions that you hold, of the spiritual wisdom, the insight, the gifts that you have. Your time is not the same as her time. Though there are similarities, they are not the same. What I'm hearing is I can see the changes. I see the strength. I see the voices risen. Raise your voice now. Raise it high. mass hysteria. Mass hysteria through Sarah's eyes is nothing more or less than children playing games and men fearing what they don't know, men fearing what they don't understand. This is curious. I know Sarah's story well. I know what happened after her death. I know that her husband, I believe it was William Good, got out of poverty because she died. Because reparations were paid for the wrongness of what happened. And while there were mutterings of blood money, she's showing me fear in a strange world, fear in a strange place, fear because what was run from caught up. And it's always just fear. And how do we overcome fear? It's nothing more or less than love. Love illuminates. Love illuminates. Okay, pile one. That is your message from Sarah Poolgood. I don't know if you guys can hear the singing song in the background, but that is my dishwasher that just finished washing the dishes, and it's singing, and it always makes me giggle when it sings because I got so excited that I have a dishwasher that sings. But as soon as I said that is your message from Sarah, the dishwasher finished. It's great. I do want to put a little bit of disclosures here. And I didn't expect to need to do this, but I definitely felt the urge and the caution from my guides. Any and everything that I channel in regards to gender, to placements within society, I ask that you remember that these are messages coming from the 1600s. And these are experiences and wisdoms that are being shared from a completely different day and age. There is no discrimination here. There is no prejudice here. There is only an awareness so that we can grow beyond the lessons of the past, so we can move forward in better ways, loving each other, respecting each other, and honoring our ancestors. And I promise you guys, I don't really feel like I need to do that with my community, but when my guides caution, I definitely listen. Pile one. You guys chose the one person from those trials that I have had the most experience channeling, who is the closest to my heart. And that means that you are close to my heart as well. And I thank you for being here, for hearing Sarah's story, for hearing her voice, for giving her this chance to share, to illuminate, and for giving her soul just that little bit more freedom. What you did in coming here to this reading and hearing these messages for her soul, it's quite profound. And I want to thank you from my ancestry to yours. Thank you. I also want to say thank you to your guides and my guides, the Great Spirit, and our ancestors through all the ages. Thank you for this reading. Thank you for the collective of Pile 1. Thank you for the inspiration, the protection, and the wisdom, and the facilitation of connection for all of these energies, for these messages. And thank you for helping us understand a point of darkness through the lens of light and love. I pray that all those from Pile 1 move forward with more confidence and curiosity and a little pep in their step. Thank you. Pile 1, thank you again. Stay tuned for more readings from spooky season. And if this resonated, I would love the support for my channel. I am still growing, still working through this, but great ways to support my channel would be to like this video, comment in the comment section. You can subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And if you are feeling called, there are donation links in the description box below. With that said, I love you guys. You guys are incredible. Thank you again for being here. And I will see you all at my next reading. Bye. Hello, Pile 2. If you chose Giles Corey and the Scythe rune, this is the message that he has, or lessons that he learned that he would like to share with you. Giles Corey, as a little bit of backstory, he was 80 years old when he was horrendously executed in Salem. Before that moment, he had had a history of not really taking others into consideration. He had murdered a farmhand, been found guilty, had to pay a fine, but he was a landowner. And he was on his third marriage to Martha Corey. Martha Corey was accused of witchcraft first. And for reasons unknown, Giles testified against her. Whether it was because of his affiliation with the church, because of his desire to remain in good standing with the community, no matter what it was, he made a choice. And that choice did not protect him from accusations being made towards him. The accusations came, however, after he recanted and tried to undo the damage he had already done in regards to his wife. as these things go, however, Giles Corey was accused and he pled not guilty, but refused to stand in court. He refused to participate in court. He refused to allow trial for himself. He remained silent. He did this, in my opinion, based off of the history, because he had already seen that it didn't matter whether you confessed. It didn't matter whether you pled guilty or not guilty. Once accused, and when they determined that you were to be imprisoned, that was the end. He had seen no one else. No one else had been found innocent or not guilty. But Giles, when I tapped into the energy originally and asked what rune, Giles chose the scythe. These cards over here represent the theme of the lesson. These 3 cards represent unseen forces, and this represents spiritual help. A lot of the channeling will have to do with his storyline in the lessons, and then we're going to get some tarot cards to help bridge between his story and yours. With the scythe, the deceiver, and fire, Giles' message is quite clear to me. When we are looking at the totality of our life and we're looking at what everything around us is transpiring as, when we're looking at what is going on, we can make the wrong decisions. We can get caught up in the passions of the moment, falling victim to the deceptions of others, but even worse, we can deceive ourselves, and in doing so, we can hurt the people that we love. One message that came through is nothing will hurt as much. Nothing will be a bigger regret than not standing by your love and not standing for the truth. The scythe in this case, especially in regards to Giles Corey, is directly about his death. Because the theme of the lesson is when we realize that we have deceived others or we have deceived ourselves, we have a choice. Do we continue to fan that flame of deception, or do we choose to put an end to it? Do we choose to stop? Do we choose to change? Giles Corey was 80 years old. 80 years old. And before he was even accused or imprisoned, he wanted to be sure that his sons-in-law would inherit his land so they would stay in good standing in the community. Made sure that his will was very clear. And one reason that history gives for why he chose not to speak in court, why he chose to refuse to have his trial heard in that court, is because he knew if he was found guilty and executed in this case, his will would be null and void, and his descendants would not be cared for. So while he did not do right by Martha in the beginning, he saw the error of his ways. He worked to repair. He worked to protect. And while many see him as being very unconscientious about other people, unconcerned about other people, I look at his story and I can tell he cared. He cared, he was protective, he understood his own wrongdoings and worked to be a better person, even at the end. Giles Corey is the only known person in the history of our country to endure death by what is called pressing. If you are hypersensitive, I strongly advise you to either click off of this reading or skip over the next little bit. I'll give a hand signal when I'm done talking about it. Pressing involves being laid down and having heavy stones placed upon you to put pressure on you. It is a barbaric torture method. And it goes against human rights first, but it also goes against the Puritan religion itself and their teachings and their quote unquote bylaws in multiple ways. Giles Corey was pressed to death over the course of 3 days. It was the court's attempt to get him to confess. 3 days, 80 years old, and his final words were more weight. Now, the reason why that event is so important is because in enduring what he endured, the length, the resilience, the determination for it to be exactly as it was, for him to continue, for that to be how he died, he is a major contributing factor to the turning of the tides of the witch trials. For people to understand and to see how wrong what was going on was, there had to be something that cut so deeply, that highlighted the level of deception and passion. And passion can be both positive and negative. And in this case, I am definitively telling you that my belief is that there was a very negative passion driven during this time. It was wrong. In every way, shape, and form, it was wrong. But there needed to be something that was more wrong to highlight the underlying factor, and that was that these trials were not. They just were not right. Giles Corey gave his life. His wife went to the gallows shortly after. But he left us with a lesson about how we can see the error in our ways and how we can stand so resolute even in the midst of torture, even in the midst of something so depraved as what he went through, and still fight the good fight. No matter the wrongdoings he had or the missteps, in the end, the lesson that he taught everyone was how to douse the flames of deception by standing, or in his case, laying. It's a really bad joke. I'm sorry. I heard it and I was like, that's not okay. Laying your life down for what you believe, for what you know to be true, and being an example. So let's take a look at the unseen forces. We have the fall. Oh my gosh, protection. And the secret. Yeah, wow, okay, yeah, sure. I'm sorry. I'm just astounded because I literally said protection and I did not expect that card to be out. But the unseen forces were that his reasonings, everyone just postulates on his reasonings. We can't know definitively because he's no longer alive. And I mean, records from back then are very skewed and very structured to the writer. But sometimes the secret to protecting the ones that we love is to fall. And unseen forces around us that push us into these states of weakness, pain, anxiety, anguish. Sometimes protecting our secrets or protecting what we perceive as wrong, that is our ultimate fall. And sometimes the truth is the more powerful. I want to take a look at the spiritual help. The trickster. I love this. I love this so much because Giles Corey's story is one that is he's so hard to hold a lot of compassion for because the recountings of him are based off of other people. But to me, when I think about it, when I look at it, the greatest trickster there is the one that knows that in order to trick a deceiver, in order to overcome a deceiver, you have to operate in a different way. There was a spiritual message that I got, and I can't remember where it was. I think it was with the I Ching, but it was about going up against negative forces, going up against darkness, Sometimes you have to do things that go against your values and your morals in order to combat something that is far worse, something that is far darker, something that has the flames of deception running rampant. Sometimes you have to become the trickster and allow for the perception to be one way. But actions do not negate inner truth and inner goodness. The whole world may have seen Giles Corey in one way, but if we really want to cut to it, we can look at everything that he did, all the steps he took, the things that he seemed to know ahead of time, the things that he seemed to see, and perhaps he testified against Martha and recanted in order to quite literally prove the deception that was going on. Sometimes we do things and we can feel guilty about the way that we do things and wonder whether we have sacrificed our goodness and what that is going to result as. But only you know the truth within you. I may be an idealist, but I like to think that Giles Corey did what he did, endured what he did every step of the way because he saw what was going on and he decided that I've lived a life. I know that I have descendants who will continue on tending to things and taking care of things. And I want to make an impact. So I'll let the perception of me be this way, but I know the truth internally. I know the real secret that I carry within, and I will protect that. Even though many may see that I have fallen, I will protect the secret. And the secret is that I saw what was going on clearer than many. And I was willing to do what no one would fathom doing by tricking a deceiver to make this stop. So let's get some tarot card messages. Giles, can you help bridge the story for Pile 2's collective? Interesting. So we have the Fool, the Three of Staves, or the Three of Wands, and the Knight of Moons, or the Knight of Swords. And on the back, we have the High Priestess. The High Priestess talks about the hidden, the occult, the wisdom, the things that we know that we can't explain how we know it. It comes from another source. It's more powerful. It's more prevalent. We have a new beginning and we are looking towards the future. That future will be carved in clarity. Giles' life came to an end, but it was but a new beginning for him. Everything that he experienced was utterly unknown, but what it did was set a precedent that moving forward, the future of that time, of that event, of the people who would be left behind, they would have clarity because the story of what he endured would live on. This is way more than I thought it would be, guys. I have looked into the Salem witch trials on and off for years. I spent months and months diving and reading and researching, and I'm seeing already how much spirit was woven into these moments for all the people then, for all the people now, and still for all the people to come. It was time for a new beginning, a new thought process, a new awareness, but it needed to be cut through by a clear message from a higher source. It matters not whether any of the people were practicing witchcraft. What matters was that spirit, faith, love were being lost in deception, in pain, in fear. And it takes boldness and an inner knowing that sometimes the clearest message is one that cuts straight to the core, one that cuts away everything that might be clouding, one that might be feeding fear, one that might be shrouded in deceptions, shrouded in lies, that cuts through all of that to the basic premise of the human nature and of respecting each other as humans, as souls. When you move forward, pile 2, I just heard, don't compare my sacrifice to yours. My sacrifice was one I made. The sacrifices you make are for you to make. But there is a clarity that you deserve to hold to, and that is that you do know yourself. You do know your inner self. You do know your goodness. Holding on to mistakes should only happen if they're there for you to learn and grow from. But you're the one that gets to choose when your new beginning is, what your journey is going to look like, and how to charge forward honestly, clearly, definitively. You have the knowing within yourself. You have the knowing within yourself. Don't be deceived by the passions or the flames of ignorance or flames of fear from anything or anyone. You have a beauty within you. And it's time for you to hold yourself to that truth. You don't need to keep things secret, protecting yourself against being cut down. I wasn't cut down. I made the cutting. I did the cutting. I made waves. I made changes. Even if it wasn't my physical doing, I did. You can too. Wow. Okay. Wow. That ended really abruptly. And like when the energy stopped, it just stopped. Pile 2. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for listening to Kyle's story, to his lessons, to his wisdom, and to his advice. Thank you as well to your guides and my guides and the Great Spirit, and to all of our ancestors collectively for helping heal this time, helping heal our time, helping bridge the lessons so that we can see how interconnected we are and we can rise up. And I pray that Pile 2 rises and steps confidently forward, knowing that they are loved and protected and knowing the truth of themselves from within. Thank you. All right, Pile 2. If this resonated and you would like to support my channel, you can do that by liking this video, commenting in the comment section below. You can also subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And there are also links in the description box if you feel called, links to donate to my channel. Those are all ways in which you can support this channel, help it grow, help these messages reach the collective even further, and just show your support and appreciation. Any and all of these things are deeply appreciated, but never expected. So with that said, Pile number 2, I love you guys. I wish you nothing but the best. And I believe in you guys. Thank you again. I will see you at my next reading. Bye. Hello, Pile 3. If you chose Sarah Osborne, this is the message that she has about lessons from Salem Village. Sarah Osborne was one of the first to be accused of witchcraft. In fact, it was another one of the accused that laid accusations against her. And in doing so, that accusation against her helped to solidify the belief that was running the fears and the mass hysteria in the town of Salem Village. When I asked Sarah what her rune that she wanted to discuss was, rings came out almost before I finished the question. And I wasn't surprised to see this. Sarah Osborne was once Sarah Prince. She married a wealthy, I believe he was a admiral at sea. I may be remembering his exact position incorrectly, but her and her first husband had 2 children. Upon his passing, his last will and testament stated that she was to have control over his estate and his inheritance and his lands until the coming of age of her sons, their sons. The oldest at the time was 6. Sarah's neighbors and brother-in-law was the Putnams. Over time, working the land, working the estate, Sarah realized she needed help. So she had an indentured servant, an Irish immigrant named Alexander Osborne. And rumors started flying in the town. Rumors of them acting inappropriately. Sarah chose to pay to free Alexander from his indentured servitude. And rumors continued about them living in the house together, sleeping together. Eventually, Sarah and Alexander got married. Sarah, in that time, was not seen as capable, worthy, or preordained to be able to own land. Her actions after getting married was to have the estate assigned to her and her husband, rather than her 2 children who were not of age. And the Putnam family came against her in litigation, fought her in the courts under the guise of her sons suing her youthful sons. All of these things made her a prime target for accusations, for the belief of witchcraft, for any strong woman, any woman who follows her heart, any woman who gets into a marriage with someone such as an indentured servant, any woman that challenges the wishes of her first husband, that goes against a very prominent family like the Putnams. That woman must be a witch. This is, in this day and age, something that is hard to fathom. We have women who are billionaires running multi-billion dollar corporations. We stand for women's rights and we fight for women's voices. But during this time in the 1600s in Salem and much of the world, women had no rights. They had no voice. And choosing love, choosing love as a wealthy woman, well, that love should have been with a wealthy man. A man who had more standing, more prominence. Sarah Osborne was 49 when she died behind bars, waiting for her verdict, waiting for her sentence, waiting. She died at 49 years old. And she was terminally ill. Now, it doesn't say in the history books what she was terminally ill with, but at 49, a terminal illness. Of course, during that time, it could have just been a really bad cold. It could have been a really bad illness, like infection of some sort. But I had the sense that Sarah knew she was sick. She knew she was sick, and she wanted to make sure that when she passed, her family was taken care of. Now, a woman like that, she prioritizes love above all. And that's why she chose the rings, because the rings are about commitment, marriage, a partnership, a union. Sarah wasn't trying to challenge her deceased husband. She wasn't trying to leave her sons out. She was trying to do what in the 21st century we all have the luxury of doing all the time, which is rebuilding what was broken, creating a new home from an empty house. Now, this card here represents the theme of the lesson. And the house card talks about our psyche. It talks about all the hidden places within ourselves that we need to examine and evaluate and recognize that we contain within ourselves. For Sarah, it's that way, but a house should be a home. And when you marry for love, not everybody's going to understand. And even in this day and age, there are many places in the world where women still don't have the right to choose for love, where men don't have the right to choose for love, where you are born into royalty or born into a certain ethnicity or belief system, and your choices are made for you. And you exist within a house, and within that house, you create the psyche of coldness, of distance. Cobwebs grow. The light doesn't shine. Maybe it's because of who I am and the fact that I resonate so deeply with Sarah's story. But I want to believe, and I really do believe, that Sarah knew she was dying. Well before the witch trials, well before the accusation, Sarah knew she was dying, and she knew that she loved Alexander. So she did what any woman in love, any mother in love would do. She did everything she could to make sure that her family was whole, so that when she passed, her children would inherit what they were meant to inherit rather than the Putnam family. That they would have what was rightfully theirs, and they would have a strong man to support them, to raise them, so that they could grow into strong men themselves. Parenthood, marriage, union, even just coming into a business partnership, these are commitments that we make in our life. And we need to remember that when we make a commitment, the rest of the world may not be able to see into the reasons behind it. They may not be able to penetrate the psyche deep enough to be able to understand. But that does not mean that the choices that we're making are wrong or unfounded. It does not mean that they're done because you have sold your soul to the devil. It does not mean that they are done because you are a bad person or that you didn't love the person that came before, or that you didn't have loyalty to these things and these people, or that you don't care about the people in your life. They're done because you know, on a soul deep, intuitive level, you know that you have to protect, that you have to make sure, especially in that day and age, that others are taken care of. So Sarah died for her commitments. She died for love. She died for her children. And it was a worthy cause. It was beautiful. And even though it was in a depraved situation and the accusations laid against her solidified atrocities, Sarah Sarah is a bright, shining star in this story because Sarah's story is one of love. While most of the stories are those of fear, what led to other people fearing her was her strength, her resolve, and her unwillingness to bend to the morals or the regulations of others in terms of her heart, her family, and her home. That is the theme of the lesson of Sarah's story. So these two outside cards are unseen forces, and these two inside cards are spiritual help. And I have to say, pile 3, you guys are the first one to get 2 spiritual help cards. We have spring and melting. I love how these flow together so well. Unseen forces here involve the changing of the seasons, changing of the weather, the changing of the tides, but also the changing of death to life. I'm getting a message about what it feels like, what it felt like when her first husband died. It was as though winter had set. The sun could have been shining and birds chirping, and it could have been blazing hot summer, but winter was here. It was solidified perpetually. We don't always see that moment when the sun is going to actually break through the ice and the cold and the snow. We go to sleep and then we wake up one day and all of a sudden it's spring. Sarah's story could be one of turning the tides into chaos, into mayhem, but that was through no fault of her own. Her story is about moving out of darkness and sadness and being stuck and being at the mercy of people who do not know you, do not love you, and do not appreciate you. And finding that moment, that morning in which spring has come and the ice and the cold and the walls that have been built begin to melt away. Sarah's story is a beautiful one in the midst of a terrible, terrible time. Because her story reminds us that love does really conquer all, even if it means impending doom, even if it means the storyline that Sarah had, because her love mattered more. Her children mattered more. Her husband mattered more. Her life mattered more. And she prioritized those things that I myself personally prioritize. And not everybody understands it, but they don't have to. In her day and age, the unfortunate thing about them not having to is that in not having to, they shuttered themselves and their own psyche to the power of love, to the beauty of a family rebuilt. So let's see what spiritual help there was and is. The untouchable and curiosity. This is very Alexander energy. It's the help in understanding this lesson, this theme, this awareness that she has in spirit was through the love that she had. The curiosity of, what if I just broke the rules once? Would I really, truly be damned? Would everything that I have been told by the people in charge, the men in charge of me, be true? This man is said to be untouchable. But what if I opened myself up, got to know him, allowed myself the idea of love again? And that we talk about in the spiritual community, that twin flame thing, that destined love. I have experienced destined love in a multitude of ways, from my husband to my best friend to my children, even my dog. No matter how much comes against true, genuine spiritual connections, true, genuine loving connections, those connections will always be stronger when you maintain that part of you that knows it's okay. So let's see, we're going to use the tarot and get messages on the story and how it connects to you. Sarah, can you show us how this connects with pile 3? We have the 8 of chalices, the Queen of chalices, and the 2 of chalices on the back of the deck. She is just reiterating, sometimes there are things that we have to walk away from. Sometimes there are things that are meant to be left behind. Sometimes there are moments in which we realize the things that we have built around ourselves are just not right for us. And in order to step into our power, in order to step into our higher levels of awareness, we have to accept the fact that we are the dictators or determiners of our hearts. It's okay for you to walk away from the old emotions and the old mindsets and the old things that hold you back, because you understand a place of power comes with a recognition of what your soul is calling for you, of what your heart is calling for you. The other people in the world may not understand it. They may not know why, but is that for them to know? We have a soul deep connection, not just with other people, but with ourselves, with our higher selves, and with spirit. Sometimes the things that we believe are untouchable are there because we're supposed to get curious and ask the question why. And not everybody likes that. Not everybody likes knowing that there are times where we're meant to ask why. Why is this something that is seen as untouchable? Why is this? Is it because it is bad? Is it because it is poison? Or is it because someone else doesn't understand it, so they fear it? Sarah's story is one of love. And I've said it over and over and over again. It is one of love. And the connection between you and her and your story and your place in your life is love. It's making the choice to evaluate the places within yourself that have frozen, that are ready for spring, that are ready for the meltdown. Examining why this frost has lasted so long. What does your heart tell you? Where is it pulling you? And what do you have to lose in softening to spring, in melting to spring, in getting curious in committing to your heart. If you feel like this is about a person, a connection, it is. If you feel like this is about a job, it is. If you feel like this is about looking at yourself in the mirror and finally loving yourself completely, it is. If this is about your family, it is. What does your heart tell you this story is about in your life? For what your heart says is true. And your ability to be loved is not an untouchable thing. You're meant to be loved, and maybe it's time for you to ask the questions of, why do I believe this? Why do I struggle with this? What parts of me do I hide away? How can I soften? How can I open? How can I commit more fully to the experience of love, the expression of love, and disregard the opinions and the beliefs of other people with the recognition that those things that they have, those opinions and those beliefs, they are nothing more or less than their own mindsets and their own fear or love. But they don't have to be mine, so I get to choose. It's a beautiful message. Pile 3, this is the message that Sarah has for you. I want to take this time to say thank you. Thank you for coming here. Thank you for listening to Sarah's story, to her messages, to her wisdom, to her lessons. Thank you to your guides and my guides and the Great Spirit and our ancestors throughout time for facilitating the connection between these energies, allowing these messages to flow through, for connecting all of us, and for filling this place and this message with such beauty and love. Thank you as well for the love that is awakening within the hearts of Pile 3. May their spring bring a great meltdown and beauty and new growth. Thank you. All right, Pile 3. This is where I leave you. If this resonated and you would like to support my channel, you can like this video, comment in the comment section below, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and you can also check my description box for links to donate to my channel if you're feeling called. I love you guys. I will see you at my next reading. Bye. Hello, Pile 4. If you chose the card Bridget Bishop with the reversed harvest rune, this is your message from her about what lessons from Salem she has to share. Bridget Bishop was one of the first accused. She was also the first executed during the Salem witch trials. There's been a lot of mixed history about Bridget Bishop. A lot of the history has confused her with Sarah Bishop, who was a tavern keeper. But Bridget Bishop, her story is quite different. Bridget Bishop was said to be between her mid-50s and mid-60s during the times of the witch trials. She was a widow. But her story doesn't start at the witch trials. Her story starts before she was widowed. Bridget Bishop was in a horrible relationship, a horrible marriage. And in that day and age, it was expected of the wife to remain silent, to abide by her husband. Often throughout history, we have this glossing over of events, of the reality. one of the good things to come out of the Salem witch trials is the amount of research that's been done has been done with the intention of telling the truest stories of these people as possible. Give me one moment. I'm going to let my cat in. All right, let's get back to that. In my opinion, it was an attempt at making amends, but also an attempt to understand how things got so out of hand, how things got so destructive, so depraved. And when we want to start looking at that, we want to look at an origin point to see what was the common theme, the common traits of the people accused, for there were so many and so many lives lost. So you look to the beginning. Bridget Bishop was a victim of domestic violence at the hands of her husband. They would fight and argue. She would try to fight back in public. But because it was a Puritan society and she was expected to behave better, more chastely, she was punished. He was punished as well, but there is one accounting of history where both her and her husband were made to stand gagged in the street while he stood clean and, I would guess, a bit standoffish at, being punished for his actions. She stood in front of public, gagged, bruised, bleeding, a beaten wife. After his passing, there was no will. Women weren't allowed to own land during that time. And she fell victim to the circumstances of life more and more and more. And it made her an easy target. When she was first accused, she stood steadfast in her innocence, but her arguments were twisted and used against her. And she learned that it didn't matter what she said. She had no standing and no voice. The cards over here represent the theme of the lesson. These two are unseen forces, and this one is spiritual help. And then we'll get some tarot cards for the storyline. With the Traveler, the Sleepwalker, and the reversed Harvest rune, one of the primary energies and messages I am picking up is that it can feel like we're floating through life. People can be blinded to what's going on, or people choose to blind themselves to what's going on. And there were times in our history where no matter how good a person was, no matter what a person did, no matter how they stood, how they behaved, someone would find something wrong with them. For Bridget Bishop, she did not have a say. She had no societal standing. At one point in her journey, I imagine the message that's coming through is that there was a point of wondering, have I done something to deserve this? perhaps the lesson here is about recognizing that sometimes blindness and silence, because of the weight and the magnitude of the experiences we have as we're traveling through life, as we're going through one moment to another, we find ourselves on the wrong side of a harvest. We find ourselves reaping what we have not sown. We can wonder, did I do something wrong? Or should I have changed this or that? Would there have been a different outcome? Would there have been a different result? Would I have been relieved? Would I have been exonerated? Would these accusations have ever come against me? There are some journeys we can't fully understand, but if we allow ourselves to sit with it and ask ourselves, am I awake in my life? Am I really awake? And I don't mean, am I woke? Am I awakened? Am I spiritually aware? I mean, am I awake? Do I see what is going on right in front of me? Do I see everything that is occurring around me? Do I see what I have in my life? Do I see what I perceive myself to be lacking? Do I see what harvest I could potentially reap? Or do I allow for circumstances to be as they are and say, I couldn't change it if I tried? None of us in this time frame can really truly fathom what it was like back then. But with this energy, I can understand questioning. Why do good things happen to bad people? Why do bad things happen to good people? Why would I be punished, or why would this person be punished for the wrongdoing of another person? Is there justice? Is there fairness? This is actually the first pile where I'm being called to share my own personal correlation to this. In my first marriage, I had one very similar to Bridget Bishop's. It was significantly less public because in this day and age that we live in, those kind of relationships are not public. You hide the bruises, you hide the trauma, you hide the marks, you hide the things that you know you're meant to hide because somewhere inside of you there is shame, or you have allowed for blame to be placed upon your shoulders and you don't want the world to know. After my divorce and when I met my current husband, I started opening up about these things. And he became my best friend. And over time, we started dating. And then over the years, we got engaged and then got married. And it is now 8 years later, and we're still navigating a lot. A lot of my automatic responses, whether they are to fight back or they are to close down, to apologize, to revert back to a state of fear. But we talk through them. And I often have wondered if maybe a mistake I made in my first marriage was that I didn't allow myself a voice. And while I am deeply grateful, I am no longer in that marriage. And for how my life is, sometimes that wondering can get to a person. Bridget had a lot of time to wonder, did them coming here, coming to the Americas, did it really make a difference? Did it help? Did it harm? Did the Puritan faith help or harm? Did this life that they were living help or harm? Should she have spoken up? Should she have stayed quiet? Should she have not fought back or not? Should she have perhaps controlled her urges? Should she have been kinder, more gentile? For had she been more acceptable, perhaps the harvest that she had reaped in life would not have been one in which she was walked alone to the gallows to help the men in the village feel safe, help the children in the village feel safe, help the women in the village feel safe, for her life to be taken because of the folly of others. Perhaps if she had changed behaviors. And when we find ourselves in these places of these wonderings and these questionings, we can choose the perspective of I am beating up on myself and I can't change the past, or we can say, okay, what is the purpose of questioning this? What is the purpose of looking at this? And how can I wake back up? I know I can't change the past, but I can heal it in the present moment, so that as I travel through life, I am no longer keeping my eyes closed and my voice silenced to these things, to these experiences. I am choosing a different way. I am choosing to wake up. I am choosing to experience with an awareness. The past may not exist anymore. It may be something that has already transpired and no longer exists in our current reality, but that does not mean that the impact of it doesn't still leave a lasting mark. And it is okay to acknowledge that, and it is okay to see it, and it is okay to wake up to it, and it is right if you feel called to evaluate, to examine, because you're meant and deserving of healing and moving on from that. So let's take a look at the unseen forces. We have strength and we have meditation. I really love this, especially because as I was preparing for this pile, I felt very weakened, very tired. It was a very familiar energy to me of defeat. And I didn't understand why, because it didn't quite reflect what was going on in my life. And so my past reaction to feeling that way would have been, I'm just going to lay down and take a nap. And when I wake up, it'll all be gone. But today I remembered the lessons I had learned over the past few years, that meditation can really shift a lot. There is strength in allowing oneself to go on a guided journey, to clear your mind, to let your body and your mind relax, to let your higher self and your heart to take the wheel. The unseen forces is that this is sad. I'm sorry. The message that just came through was, I wish I had known the strength in these actions, in these practices. And it's not that the Puritans didn't practice some forms of meditation. It's they weren't as expansive as they are now, and they weren't as encouraged as hard work and obedience. We can fight meditation in so many ways. We can fight doing any kind of meditations. I know I do. ADHD, ADD, neurodivergent brain, and chronic illness, and 4 kids, and all the many, many things that I have going on. And I always tell myself I don't have time. I don't have the energy, or I can't calm my mind. I can't do that. And then I remember how I trained myself to meditate, and I return back to that. And I trained myself to meditate by crocheting. And I try to make it a nightly practice. And I falter. But your truth and your resilience and your awareness grow. Your strength in these things grow more and more as you give to yourself a break from the chaos of the mind. And these aren't things that we can ever see. The concept of unseen forces really was intended to be like, okay, what are the outside forces that have a play on this? And for the most part, throughout this entire reading, they have been unseen forces of help. There just was so much more spiritual help than most were aware. And I feel that way so much so with the collective now. There is so much more help than what we realize. An unseen force is what you stand to gain versus how hard the practice is going to be when you begin it, versus how hard it is to maintain it, versus all those ideations and notions that if you do something for 21 days straight, it's going to become a habit. It doesn't. It doesn't. It takes longer. It takes a will, and it takes commitment, and it takes a want and a desire, and life comes in and knocks you down and you fall out of practice. But whether or not this pertains to meditation or to working out, eating healthy, or just being more mindful of the way that your mind tells you certain things based off of the past, there is a strength in letting those thoughts be just thoughts rather than be who you are, be your identity. There is a strength in that for you. And no matter how much you may falter or fall away from any kind of practice that betters your life, when you come back to it, there is strength as well. So let's look at the spiritual help. Yes, we have soulful. And I love how this is, gray and then there's this streak of blue. But with meditation, the blue is really blowing up. And what help is there available? Soulful help. There is help from the soul. There is help from the spiritual realm. That is the fire energy, fire of spirit. Spirit is fire energy. And that is that ignition of truth and clarity. And how you do that is by clearing your mind, building your strength, and the strength of your voice to cut through the mist, to cut through the chaos, to cut through all the cloudiness that can happen, especially if you resonate with any part of Bridget Bishop's story, whether male or female, gender identity does not matter in this case. Whether you have been in that kind of relationship, if you are a child of that kind of relationship, if you are the significant other of that kind of relationship, even a parent can have that kind of relationship with their child. If you are on the victim side, and this is not about victim mentality, this is about you have truly suffered at the hands of another person. Building the strength to use your voice, to find your truth, to gain your clarity, and to cut through the fog of illusions and false realities. That is a soul deep, fulfilling purpose. You don't even have to share it with the outside world, but just giving yourself a voice with yourself. Hearing you instead of other people. That is a purposeful motion and movement and action taken in this life. And it takes a great strength when you've undergone these things. So let's take a look at the tarot cards. Bridget, can you help with whatever story or guidance you have for pile 4. Is there another one in here? Bridget? We have the 2 of Chalices, the 8 of Chalices, the Queen of Chalices, and the Chariot. And finally, we have the 5 of Moons or the 5 of Swords. If you've ever found yourself asking the question, is love enough? Ask yourself if it is a mutual reciprocal love. Is it an equal love? Is it truly balanced? Is it true, each person giving 100%? Not one person gives 50 and the other gives 50, but each person gives 100% to the love. Sometimes we can give 100% and convince ourselves that that's what we're receiving and still find ourselves needing to leave behind that love. And we can struggle to understand why, but if we allow ourselves to see that the journey outside of that leads us into this greater awareness, this greater understanding, empathy, compassion, and greater gift of love. It's in that moment that we are able to understand on a more visceral, intuitive level. I was giving 100%, but I was not receiving 100%. And it is not because I don't know how to receive, it's because it was not being given. So while I was giving 100, I was gaining 50 back. So I would give 100 again and gain 50 back. At that point, you're giving 100, getting 50 back. You minus 100 from that, and you're down to 50. Over time, it ends up not balancing out because you're always in a state of depletion. If you only have 50 that was given back and you give 100 after that, you're negative 50. Now they give back 50 and you're at 0. And this is the point where you convince yourself, I can keep going. I can keep doing this, because you went from being depleted to just simply being empty. And so you think, I can do this. This is right. I feel better. So it must be right. And then you give 100% and you don't realize that in doing that, you're dropping yourself all the way down to negative 100. And they're only giving 50 back every single time. It's one of the hardest journeys for us to learn when we are in a connection of that sort. It's one of the hardest journeys to walk away from that. Bridget Bishop did not have that opportunity. She did not have that luxury, because in doing so during that day and age, even though divorce was accepted, she still would have ended up exactly where she was. It was a catch-22 situation. But I can speak from personal experience that I look at my own divorce as one of the greatest blessings of my life. It was the most destructive thing I have had to enact in my life, because I destroyed a family. I destroyed multiple families, not just my immediate family with my ex-husband and my kids, but I destroyed the family connection that I had built with his family, that of him with my family, and the community we were involved in, the friends that we had built together. All of that was lost. And when you lose all of that, you're left feeling like you have nothing. Now you've gone from at least having someone give something back to I have nothing. And there isn't anyone for me to even try to give to or receive from. And you want to sleepwalk through the rest of your life because it's so hard. And I did that. I did that for years. I sleptwalked my way through 5 years post-divorce at the bottom of a bottle. Never allowing myself to see that there was love in my life. A different kind of love, because I just assumed that all love would be the same. It was my assumptions, it was my mentality, it was my mindset, and it was based off of my experiences. It was based off of a rotten, destroyed harvest that I had reaped, a decision I made out of love. And it was my decision, and I had to reap what I sowed. And I don't take ownership of his actions, but it was still a decision I made to be in it, to stay in it for as long as I did. But in walking away, I gained me back. It took years. It took years of clawing my way back. And then another few years of clawing my way into acceptance of who I am. And that's why I am here with you all today. But you can get your way back there. There is a successful path. It's about recognizing that some battles are better to throw your swords down, walk away from, to simply walk away. And that's so hard to hear. And I hate saying that because I am one who will never give the advice to walk away from a marriage or a relationship. But if I hadn't walked away from mine, my life wouldn't be what it is. I wouldn't be alive. And I know that I would not be alive. Whatever this pertains to in your life, whatever it pertains to in your life, knowing what battles are worth fighting and knowing which ones aren't is one step out of the sleepwalker energy. One more step as the traveler experiencing things, one more step into that awareness for your strength. It is a form of meditation. Going through revelations, allowing yourself to actually mentally examine things, emotionally examine things. It is a form of meditation because what you're doing is you're clearing yourself, calming yourself, you're coming back to yourself. The battle for you should be the battle that trumps everything else in your life. It does not mean it is a selfish battle. It doesn't mean that it is wrong to do so. It means that you're saying, I know my worth, I know my value, and I know that I am filled with a soul that is divine. And I know that I am worthy of being fought for. So I will move wherever I need to move and do whatever I need to do in order to come back to myself, to reconnect with myself, so that the next time harvest comes around, I will reap the benefits of the good that I have done for myself and then for others. I will be successful in knowing that this journey had meaning, had purpose, that my life has meaning and purpose, that my path has meaning and purpose, and I will go forth with success. Ooh, that was really weird. I felt like I had a tickle in my right ear, and then the message just stopped and the energy stopped, and now I have spirit tingles. All right, pile 4. I want to first thank you for being here and for hearing this message, receiving it, for allowing me to pour back into you. I love you guys so much. I also want to say thank you to Bridget Bishop, to your guides, to my guides, to the Great Spirit, and to our ancestors throughout all the ages for the energy of this message, for the love, for the hard truths, for the support. Thank you. And I pray right here and now that pile 4 will see how worthy of a battle it is for themselves, and that they will feel the love from above, from their soul, and here on this channel. Thank you. Pile 4, if this resonated and you would like to support my channel, you can do that in very simple ways. You can like this video, comment in the comment section below, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and you can also, if you are feeling called to it, check out the links in the description box to donate to my channel. Any and all of those things help support my channel, help support this endeavor that I am doing, this path I am on. They are all deeply appreciated. None of them are ever expected of you, though. Thank you guys again. My heart goes out to you. I love you all. I will see you at my next reading. Bye.